Great to have you, Carl. I know it's been a long time, a minute, talking to you about mixed martial art, but let's get into it. It's after 3 years away from the MMA, Francis Ngannou, he is back, of course, stepping into the cage for the first time. And after 3 years, and he will have to go up against Renan Ferreira in the PFL Super Fight, dubbed the Battle of the Giant. Now, if you see these two fighters, of course, you will call them giants, of course. Very obviously, they are both giants, with questions surrounding Ngannou's readiness for this fight and his knockout power on full display. This heavyweight showdown promises to be explosive. Both fighters had their head bumped into each other for that face-up there, so something bigger is going to happen in the cage. We'll have to dive deeper into the matchup, but let's see. Comparing both fighters and their record, let's see what they've got before we let Kyle into this conversation. We know that both fighters have the big difference in height, with Ferreira being taller than Ngannou. Ferreira having his record, a great record there, and I'm so scared for the Predator himself. He's popularly known as the Predator. But Ngannou weighed in lighter than Ferreira, who weighed heavier than him. And that's a big, a big concern for me with this height at 6 inches 4, with Ferreira being 6 inches 8, 264 pounds, from Brazil, being known as the Problem. You know that there's going to be problem for Francis Ngannou, who's just returning for the first time after 3 years. Cal, when you heard this matchup, being Francis' debut in the PFL, how did it come to you first, before I let Michael talk?
Well, I think that it's interesting that you pull attention to the height and the weight, because that's the most interesting thing to me about this fight is we've seen Francis beat better opponents than Renan Ferreira. He's obviously faced a higher level of opposition in the past, but Renan Ferreira is one of the only people in the sport who can make Francis Ngannou look up to him. He is so tall, so athletic, so big that he can kind of match Ngannou in a lot of the physical departments, which, like I said, there aren't many people on the planet, let alone in the sport, that can do that. And that's where it gets interesting, is how Ngannou deals with that, because a lot of the time he's able to just be the far bigger, more powerful athlete of the two men in the cage, but he's not going to have that advantage against a guy like Renan Ferreira, who is a giant of a man.
A giant of a man indeed. Obviously, you can see that from the picture. But Michael, in this conversation, do you think Ngannou's long layup from the MMA and his recent knockout loss to Anthony Joshua might a bit affect his performance against Ferreira? Are you concerned in any bit?
Yes, I'm a little concerned. There's a big possibility that might affect him psychologically heading into this bout, because they say in MMA, not necessarily in MMA, in sports generally, you're as good as your last bout or game or fight or whatever it might be. In this case, he suffered a KO, a knockout loss to Anthony Joshua, and now he's coming back into a world that he's very familiar with, the MMA. And like the guest in the UK rightly said, for Ngannou, for me, he has the experience. He's met a better, tougher opposition during his days in the UFC. I remember when he defeated a former UFC champion in Stipe Miocic. He held on to that title until he was forced to vacate it because of a contract dispute he had with the UFC president in Dana White. But then again, he's had an amazing career. He's never been knocked out in the UFC. He's only lost matches by a unanimous decision or split decision, as the case may be. So if you look at the array of talents that he's defeated in his UFC days, he's defeated Curtis Blades, Stipe Miocic, I made mention of. I remember the knockout he handed over to England's own Alistair Overeem. Yes, I remember that knockout. And also, shortly before he had to vacate the title, his last bout in the UFC, he went into that bout with Cyril Gaines. He defeated Cyril Gaines in that one. Let's not forget, he was even injured. He tore a ligament in his knee and still went on to take that one. So if you talk about confidence level, he has it right there. But then knowing what he suffered at the hands of Anthony Joshua when he switched over to boxing, it might affect him a little bit, but I think he has what it takes to shake it off.
To shake it off, you have some reservations here, Michael, and I'm sure that Cal also shares the same reservations with you. But Cal, with all that Michael has said, Ferreira, if I'm correct with that Brazilian pronunciation, he's on a hot streak. I'm a bit concerned. He's got 5 knockouts in his last 6 fights. I'm saying it again, 5 knockouts in his last 6 fights. What challenges does his striking and his jiu-jitsu pose for Francis Ngannou at this time, who has been out for like 3 years before this debut?
Yeah, well, obviously the height is a huge thing. Renan Ferreira is going to have a reach advantage on Francis that not a lot of people have. Whether he's going to be able to use that to keep Francis back is going to be a really interesting thing that we're going to have to find out in the fight itself. So that's definitely a threat. The only other thing, I suppose, is that Renan Ferreira is used to fighting guys that want to take him down because he's so big, so tall, so powerful. They want to negate all of those advantages by taking him down. I don't really expect Francis to do that. I think he could do that. We saw that against Cyril Gane. He can switch it up and go to his wrestling if he needs to win the fight. I don't expect him to do that, but he's also been training a lot of boxing over the last year for those fights with Tyson Fury and Anthony Joshua. So it'd be interesting to see how he's able to switch back to MMA, where the range and everything like that, the timing, the footwork is going to be a little bit different. And against a guy like Renan Ferreira, if you make the wrong step at the wrong time, it's all over. So we're going to find out. And I think that range is going to be really interesting to see how Francis deals with that, because he's never had to deal with that before.
Yes, I'm waiting to see how he deals with that indeed. But he can be unpredictable sometimes. And given that strategy from Francis Ngannou, do you expect him to rely more on his striking, or maybe he gets to explore the grappling as he did against Cyril Gane? We remember that Cyril Gane's fight, he grappled so well that he overcame him in no time. Can he go with this strategy because he's unpredictable, Kyle?
I think the thing with the Cyril Gane fight is Cyril is a very fast, light-footed heavyweight.
And so Ferreira is not?
It was hard for Francis to really kind of catch him where he wanted him and then land his destructive power that we know that he has. Renan Ferreira is not really the same kind of fighter. He isn't going to try and, fight off of the back foot quite as much. I do think he will counter-strike a little bit, but that worked for Francis because he could get close to Cyril and keep him in one place and take him down. I don't think that is going to be Ngannou's plan here, but it is a good plan B to have in his back pocket. Renan Ferreira is a jiu-jitsu black belt, but we have seen him have issues in the past with people taking him down and smothering him on the ground. And Francis, we saw it in the Cyril Gane fight, he's confident enough to do that if he thinks it's his best path to victory.
All right, we'll wait to see if that will play out in the cage today. Michael, it's time to put you and Cal on the sport. Both fighters have a lot of respect for each other, on their skill, on how they present themselves in the cage. Do you see this fight playing out tactically over the course of 25 minutes?
Well, I think I foresee a knockout in this one.
Wow.
In favor of Francis Ngannou. Yes, let's not forget he has that power punch, the right hand.
But you remember that Ferreira has got 5 knockouts in 6 bouts, and you think an Ngannou, who is returning after 3 years, will knock him out that way?
Irrespective of what Ngannou went through recently when he switched over to boxing, I'm not going to throw away what he achieved and accomplished during his days in the UFC, and that makes him a bigger, better star heading into this one. Yes, you might want to talk about Ferreira, his height, his size, his body weight, but all that might be thrown into the bin if he doesn't step it up into the octagon, facing a man who, for me, has more experience and has faced tougher oppositions in his career than Ferreira. So I'm giving it to Ngannou. It could be a second-round knockout.
Cal, he says a second-round knockout. This is Ngannou, who, of course, suffered the loss of his child, and he's got that tattoo over there saying, I'm going to do this for my child, for my son. Now, with this Ngannou in the cage, do you think he can deliver the knockouts within 25 minutes of the fight?
Yeah, I do. It's been 1,000 days, I believe, since we saw him fight in MMA, but I don't really have a reason to doubt Francis because, like you said, the stuff that he's gone through, not only with the Joshua loss, but then also losing his son earlier this year, it really seems to have lit a fire under him to go and really prove a point, but also honor his son. That seems to be the motivation going into this one. That is a scary man indeed. Anyway, with the motivation that he's got behind him right now, I can't really doubt that we won't see a Francis that's somewhat resembles the Francis that we are used to seeing in MMA, even though it's been a long time. I do think he will get a knockout, and I think it'll be early. I would even go first round.
First round. But let's remind the viewers, both fighters' record at this time. I know that Francis Ngannou has got 3 losses by decision there in his record books. As Francis Ngannou, I need to see that now. Okay. By submission, he's got 4 wins by submission there. By knockout, 12 wins, 17 in total that he's got. 20 matches already he's been involved in, and he's got 3 losses, those coming by decision. And know that the boxing losses also have been included in this. And we see Ferreira from Brazil. This man has got 5 wins by knockouts in his latest 6 bouts, but 11 in total there by submission, 1 by decision, 1. Now you can see a big difference in the record of these fighters. By submission, you could see that Ngannou has got more fights, wins by submission, but Ferreira has got only 1, and by decision only 1, but by knockout 11 in total. 5 out of his last 6 bouts. You should be scared of this kind of a man in the PFL. Kyle, I would love to know, if this fight doesn't go in favor of Francis Ngannou in his debut in the PFL and also the chairman of the PFL, what will play out?
I think that Francis will be. It'll be interesting to see what he does regarding the PFL. If he ends up losing this fight, I think that he could definitely still go into boxing. And boxing is a little bit different to MMA. I don't think.
So he should have a total switch.
I don't think he would necessarily need to do that, because MMA is a little bit different in that I don't think people hold losses as significantly as they do in boxing. Of course, it would be a big setback for him, but considering he's been gone for a long time, there's potential, reasoning there for why we wouldn't see the best Ngannou in this fight.
All right, you're so optimistic, and I'm hoping that I share the same with you. But I still have at the back of my mind his absence for 3 years right now in the MMA. Oh, thank you so much, Kyle Diamond, for breaking that for us. Share your thoughts with us on In the Game today.